Welcome to this week in Missouri Politics Overtime. The opinion maker panel's gone, all except Representative Franks. Thanks for sticking around.
No problem. Always.
So, we talked about it on the show about what the protests are actually about. At some point, though, don't you have to take? I mean, do you worry that sometimes what you've led here kind of goes back into Ferguson? I'm not sure there's been a lot of concrete changes since Ferguson. I think the cities now have to kind of fix their books a little bit better when they, basically taxation by citation through better accounting. Outside of that, I don't think there's been a lot of concrete changes. You've mentioned on the show accountability for the police. What does that mean?
So accountability for the police, think about it now. We need a public safety director, and that's no knock to our acting director, Charlene Deacon.
We're talking about in the city.
In the city of St. Louis. That's no knock to Charlene. She's a great woman. She knows what she knows. She's been here for a while. But we need somebody with a strong law enforcement, as well as strong community engagement as well, because that's the person that holds the chief accountable. That's the chief's boss. So for us to be having this national search for a police chief when we don't even have the chief's boss in place, that's an issue within itself. Then we go down to a chief and we start to form the police department the way we need it as far as the city of St. Louis, which will help bring accountability to the police department.
You say the way we need it, what do you mean?
I mean, we need a more inclusive, community-oriented police department that directly reflects the community in which they police.
Does that mean hiring more African Americans?
So that it doesn't just mean hiring more African Americans, but it's looking at the fact that African Americans are disproportionately affected when it comes to police encounters and so on and so forth. So what do our policies right now do that truly affect what's going on? How can we change our policies? How can we change the way the police investigate themselves? How can we change the culture of the police department with certain policies that we have on the police department? And how can we start removing some of these bad actors and bad apples that we have, even higher up commanders that need not be there anymore, in order to start changing this culture, to make sure that our police department is there for all of St. Louis, and not just one particular part of St. Louis.
So, since we've become friends,
absolutely,
I consider you friends. Somebody I met in Jeff City.
Absolutely.
I have to admit, some of the talks we've had, I say things a little differently now. Not that really, I don't think I had a bad heart. I didn't know how things were perceived by people. You kind of have your own view of the world. The view of the world you gave me has made me a better person. I really enjoy learning your perspective. Talk to somebody in Odessa right now that maybe try to explain to them why it's different. I do believe if we were both arrested tonight, we would have very different experiences in most any municipality. I think it may be a systemic thing. I don't think it's really that cops are bad to me. I think it's that the system is different. Can you explain that to a guy in Odessa that is interested to hear what you have to say, but he can't grasp the experiences you've had being different than his?
So it comes from a couple different ways. Some of it is just culture and how folks grow up, right? I grew up on 4300 Gibson. I come from the south side of St. Louis. I see things differently than somebody who would come from Odessa or Pemmican County, or some other county where everybody around them looks like them. Sure. And we deal with everything the same way. Some of it is systemic. Some of it is systemic racism. Some of it is blatant racism. It's a melting pot of things. But what we have to do from the beginning is we have a lot of people that say, well, I can't walk in your shoes. I don't walk in your shoes. I don't know what it's like to be black. I don't know what it's like to have this type of hurt that you have or feel the way that you feel. But those of us who are fathers, those of us who have been in the delivery room with our wives and our significant others, we saw pain when they were going through labor. We didn't necessarily go through labor. We didn't deliver the baby, but we knew that our wives and our significant others are in pain. And when folks hit the street the way they've hit the street, whether they believe in it, agree with it or not, they have to look at the anger, the pain, and everything that's going on to kind of bring it in and say, hey, well, what's wrong? Not just what you see on the outside. You may see folks blocking traffic. You may see folks targeting businesses. You may see sometimes, somebody feels like they're getting their aggression out and they throw a rock through a window. You might not agree with that. That might be.
Well, do you agree with somebody breaking someone's window?
So this is what I'll say. This is what I'll say.
I don't think you've done any of that.
I wouldn't go out and break a window.
Yeah.
What I will say is rioting is the language of the unheard. Now, when I say that, I mean when you have a governor that sends the National Guards and they station themselves in economically distressed communities like our 3rd Ward, right? Our 3rd Ward, one of our poorest wards in the city. You station the National Guards here to protect what? You're not there to protect the neighborhood. You're not there to protect the people in the neighborhood. You're there to protect the highways and property, period. Downtown, affluent neighborhoods. You're not there to protect the people in the 3rd Ward.
But in his defense, though,
Hold on, real quick.
on that and got elected saying he would do that.
We have 188 murders. We've had 188 murders 2 years in a row. We've had a up spike even this year when our governor became governor. We've had all of these police involved shootings. We've had all of these different issues. You haven't sent the National Guard or any other resources in here to help aid anything else. And one thing that he did run on is that he would be a governor for everybody, not just the Republican Party, not just for the folks who supported him.
He lives in St. Louis. He has a better view of this than any
He doesn't
governor
live in St.
50
Louis
years.
anymore. He moved out of St. Louis. And at the end of the day, even if you live in St. Louis, if you don't come out of your box, if you don't come out of your Central West End area and go over there to the West Side where folks are starving, where folks need jobs, where folks do feel disproportionately affected by what's going on in our police department, then you living in the city of St. Louis means nothing.
Ask you a question. There were folks sent me a story that was ran on some British paper about battle rap. I didn't know what a battle rap was till I met you. They were attacking you for lyrics and things. Give me the 30-second pushback when somebody asks you about that.
So it was actually from when I was making music.
Yeah.
It was years ago, 8, 9 years ago. And there's not a person that can say that they don't listen to some type of music that's not acceptable.
Country music has cheating and drinking, and it's the same. Yeah, it's the same thing.
Only thing is I did that type of music. That's where I come from. My words were just an expression.
You think that's a cheap shot? Because I kind of do.
It's absolutely a cheap shot. And at the end of the day, Malcolm X said, don't be so quick to judge for someone that they don't do as you do or say as you say, because there was one point where you didn't think as you think now. And Ferguson is what woke me up. And even in my battle raps, you would see that my language started to change. I went into more education and went into more social injustices and talking about those issues. So I think it's a cheap shot. Folks will bring up the past all they want to, but at the end of the day, bring up the past when my brother was killed in 1991. Let's bring up the past in 158 funerals I've been to, coming from an economically distressed neighborhood. What's also in the past is when I got beat by the cops in December 24, 2014 out in Berkeley. So if we're gonna bring up the past, let's bring up the past to bring it all full circle, and let's see where this aggression and where this tone comes from.
I got 2 more questions. One, I want to ask you, blocking streets. It's against the law as the law is currently written. Representative Shore come up with a law to make it even more severe. When you block that street, aren't you blocking the street for some folks that aren't part of the problem? They're just trying to get home to their families after work or trying to get to work. Sometimes folks are trying to get to community events to talk about these issues, and they can't because the streets are blocked. Do you see where those people come from?
So yes, I do. And for those folks who are going to those community events to talk about those problems, those are the same people that get out of their cars and chant and root for us. We also have people that go throughout the cars as they're blocked, as they're in traffic.
You haven't always been political. That's one thing I love about you. You haven't always been a political guy.
At all.
Before you were political, if the road was blocked and you were just trying to get home to your family after working all day, how would that have struck you?
I wouldn't be upset simply because before I got into politics, this is the fight I was fighting.
Okay.
And even before so, I don't know how I would have felt.
Because we know a lot of people that aren't political at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but
at the end of the day, even yesterday when we were on Chippewa and Hampton, man rides up on a motorcycle as we're blocking it off. He's yelling, "My wife is having a baby. My wife is having a baby." We cleared the road, pushed him through, moved the other side. Emergency vehicles cleared the road, bi-state buses, even on the highway. On the highway, one of the things I heard is that folks going through and making sure everybody's okay and being able to direct folks to the shoulder to get off if they're seriously injured, pregnant, or something else is going on. Hey, are you okay? You might not understand why we're out here. We still want to make sure everybody's okay while we're out here. So I definitely get it, but at the end of the day, what we have to understand is why we are out here. And the main argument you run into is when folks say you're doing it wrong, you ask them, well, what's the right way to do it? And they don't know.
Sure. Well, you knew you would get arrested. And you
Absol-
went out there, and
Absolutely.
that's part of the rule of law playing out.
Absolutely.
Lyda Crewson, there were some folks that demanded she resign. I don't understand why Lyda Crewson should resign, stemming from an incident that happened 6 years before she was elected by a judge she had nothing to do with.
So the particular group, which have been doing work as well throughout the city before Lyda was even in office, they called for her resignation.
Do you support that call?
So that's not part of our call.
Yeah.
That's not part of our call. But I don't condemn their call. They have their reasoning why, and if it makes sense for them, that's fine. I think with us and with me in particular, but I'll say us, is that we need a better response. We need a quicker response because there are things, it's so many contradictory things going on out here. And our police department is an issue right now. And our interim chief is an issue right now. So at the end of the day, when we can have some of the issues that we're having, if we can have these officers who are black officers who are being treated the way they would be treated if they were in the streets by white officers, and the first thing you do is go to sweep it under the rug or to gloss over it to save your own behind, that's an issue. And that's a slippery slope to start right now, even as an interim chief. So we need to nip that in the bud right now before we go any further.
Last question I have for you. I don't know that a lot happened out of Ferguson, concrete policy-wise. There's some reports and things, but people that I know I asked don't have a lot of actual successes. October 1st, 2018. Nothing happens fast, maybe for a reason in politics. October 1st, 2018. When would you think this was a success? What would need to happen for you to look back on this and say, we did good. We did good work here?
For the culture of the police department to change, to see some new faces in the police department, to see some new policies put forth, to see that police-involved shootings have gone down, to see that a lot of the use of force incidents we've had have gone down, and to just see an all-around better culture when it comes to economically distressed communities and the police department, as well as resources being provided from whether it's our mayor's office or the business interests that we have in St. Louis, everybody coming to the table to make things happen.
Those are a lot of generalities.
Yeah.
What could, if you were in office, let's say somebody I respect is Sarah Wood Martin, an alderwoman in South City. I think she's a serious policymaker. What policies could someone like her, who's interested, who's reasonable, who is a very talented legislator, what could she start working on to try to affect policies that would make that a reality?
Independent investigations with our police department. Totally redoing the civilian oversight board, putting more teeth to it. Actually funding slate from the city. This is an office that's up under the city's purview, but doesn't get funding from the city. Making sure we have adequate programming. It's a plethora of things that we can do. But one thing I like to say about October 1st, 2018, if we don't see change by then, if we haven't seen change by then, you will have seen some of the longest protests, some of the longest civil disobedience, because we will apply as much pressure as needed. So if nothing's being done, the pressure will be there. We're not getting tired. We won't get tired. Numbers will only grow. We will only strengthen, and we will only continue to do exactly what we've been doing if nothing changes.
Representative, thank you for taking the time to join us.
No problem, always.
We'll see you next week on This Week in Missouri Politics.